Greetings, everyone, and happy Black History Month. I'm Tanya Adams, Board Chair for Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. I also serve as a Senior Vice President at WSP for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. I want to warmly welcome our second edition of COMTO's Chair Leadership Chats. And today, my guest is an amazing Henrika Buchanan, Vice President, Transit and Rail Market Sector at HNTB. In this role, Ms. Buchanan uses her expertise to help HNTB's clients across the country make connections possible. Prior to her role at HNTB, she spent 20 years at the Federal Transit Administration, leading safety and oversight. She is a proud graduate of Alabama A&M University, and she was Alumni of the Year, and she chairs the President Alumni Advisory Council. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science, like myself, and a master's in urban planning from Alabama A&M, and a law degree from Georgetown University. She was honored in 2023 as COMTO Women Who Moves the Nation. Henrika, thank you for joining me today. This is truly my pleasure and honor.
Thank you, Tanya, for having me. And I do want to thank COMTO for providing this forum for us to just do a dialogue about our love for this industry and how we can help continue to drive equitable outcomes through infrastructure investments. So thank you for having me.
Again, it is our pleasure. I love seeing your Alabama A&M pride, go HBCU. Yeah, it's something that we need to make sure that our young people know that we are an asset when we attend HBCUs. So as your role at FTA, such an important one, it really, help with safety and make sure that it's managed in a way that it brings opportunity and knowledge to your clients. So I want to start with our first question, speaking about that. Please share with us more about your background and your previous work at FTA and your current role right now at HNTB.
So Tanya, I often tell people I'm probably the least likely person that you would have ever expected to be a transit and rail expert in the country. And that's because I'm from a small town of Hillsborough, Alabama, where the population is 600 people. And there's still no red light. We do have a railroad, right, with two crossings that run through the town. But in terms of transportation and transit and mobility and other options, what I knew was the car or your ability to get a cousin or aunt or someone to take you to where you needed to go. There was no public transportation or transit alternatives. And so as you mentioned, I attended undergrad and graduate school at Alabama A&M University, and I had an opportunity once I graduated to be selected as a presidential management fellow and have an opportunity to come into the federal government in sort of a management trainee position. And so that's where I got my start at the Federal Transit Administration. And I tell people the very first time that I took public transit was when I flew to DC to interview with the FTA, and I got to ride the WMATA system. And so that was my introduction to public transportation. And then 22 years later, I was still riding that WMATA system and still working in that industry. So I started as an intern. I spent 5 years in our Atlanta office, in a regional office, which is where I really learned a lot about our grant programs and funding and planning and sort of that direct work with grantees. And then I moved back to DC with more of a policy focus. So my longest tenure at the FTA was spent as the Associate Administrator of Program Management, where I operated and ran over $12 billion in federal funding programs. I was responsible for grant compliance and the project management oversight program that at that time was overseeing around 23 major capital projects for $117 billion in federal investments. And so my last 3 years, I did spend, once FTA got Safety Regulatory Authority, I did shift over to being the Associate Administrator of Safety and Oversight, where I was responsible for finalizing the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, final rule that would be used to manage and oversee transit safety in the industry, and also for grant compliance for federal funding for over 3,000 federal grant recipients. And so currently, as you mentioned, I've taken that federal expertise in that in federal funding, federal compliance over to HNTB Corporation, where I am a vice president in our national transit and rail market sector. And I'm currently charged with sort of leading our efforts as it relates to our strategy around intercity passenger rail. As we know, there's generational investment in our infrastructure right now with the IIJA and over $66 billion of guaranteed funding for intercity passenger rail. And so I'm focused on ensuring that we're resourced and that we can provide value to our clients in that space that allow them to really make their project, get their project delivery moving forward and make these projects all across the country a reality.
It's interesting when we're having this conversation. So coming from Peoria, Illinois, a little bit bigger than where you came from, but people, when they hear it, they don't realize that. About 100,000, but we didn't have a transit and rail system in Peoria. We had freight coming through, yes. It wasn't until I moved to Chicago that I first rode on CTA, and I was amazed. It was an experience to see, and it brings life, and it helps people move around much freely. So it's interesting. And I also started as an intern with IDA, that's how I got started. So I do think internships and fellowships are important. You know, they help us decide on what we want to do and help us show our expertise to the leaders out there. So with that, your lived experience. How does your lived experience contribute to the perspective that guides the work you do each and every day?
So I thought about it. When I think about a word that sort of really embodies me, that word is service. And when I think about my lived experience, my very early memories are of driving home on our gravel road, right? The back roads, as we would call it when you're from a rural community, it's the back roads, a gravel road from church with my grandmother. And I remember as we would pass by the individual farms, we would stop and we would pray for the farms of our neighbors. And when we got to our farm, we would pray for our farm as well. And what I didn't recognize as a 4 and a 5-year-old was that in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a period of back-to-back years of drought-like conditions. And so farmers were really suffering with the ability to be able to make their crops and to support their families. But what I did learn from that was that it was important for me to use my skills. And what I had at that time was my ability to pray to help my community. And so I really think from a foundational standpoint that it's important to me that I work in a space where I'm able to use my skills in a way that moves communities forward. And that's why I so love the transportation infrastructure space, because we have an opportunity to use these investments across the country in a way that not only provides mobility for communities, but in a way that provides economic opportunity and jobs to the community, to the people within the community. And that's what I'm encouraged about. That's what drives me every day, and really what motivates me each day to get up and give 100% of what I have to the work that I do, because of the value and the difference that it makes in people's lives.
I think it's your passion, you know, and your dedication to it. Is just amazing. And the fact that it does bring wealth to the communities when you're able to access jobs, especially when we have so many areas that are limited on how you can get to opportunities to make a living. So I truly agree with you on all points on that. I think for me, with being in inclusion diversity, it's people-centered as well. You know, it's all centered around how can we help people be better. And the fact that this is Black History Month, and I say Black history is 365 days a year, you know, and it marks the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is a very important year for me. It's just remarkable that we are still out here doing these things, and things still need to be done. We call our COMTO members equity champions, and you're definitely one. As an equity champion, we reflect on the upcoming 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. How can we continue to address equity for underrepresented in transportation to meet all needs?
So we've said so often, I hear it often, that transportation is really the great equalizer, right? And so we know that people have an opportunity to have a leg, to move up when they have access, whether it's access through mobility to get there, or whether it's access through the ability to get the good paying jobs that transportation infrastructure projects bring to communities across the country. And so as we think about equity and being an equity champion, I'm excited about where we are currently in that space, that we're in a time when equity is important, where we're talking not just about how we develop a transportation project in a community or for a community, that we're talking about how we co-create projects with the community, which I do think is going to be critically important if we are going to create projects that really benefit or provide the benefits that communities need. I remember that Peter Rogoff, who was the administrator of the FTA, used to say that when you've seen one transit system, you've seen one transit system. And what that reminds me of is that, you know, each community is unique. And so there's no cookie cutter way that you go and that you create projects for communities across the board. That when you're creating, designing, developing, planning, conceptualizing projects for communities, that they really have to serve the needs of that particular community. And the only way to do that is by engaging the community. And so as an equity champion, I think what's important is that we do take the momentum that we have in this space and really shift the paradigm away from planning for communities to planning with communities in a way that we expect them to have direct benefits from the investments that are happening in their area. And if we can make that fundamental shift, and I do see it happening, right? You know, in year one, it's sort of like a dictate that, you know, equity is important and let's figure out how we do it. But I think, you know, as we see more and more time go, that it's becoming the common practice. And as we do that, and I think some of that is even demonstrated in our partnership. And I know we'll talk about our partnership, but some is demonstrated in our partnership in terms of how we bring small businesses to the table, how we go out and how we engage communities when we're looking at major investments in those areas. And by doing that, I think that that's really where we'll begin to see equitable outcomes and projects being developed in our space, in our industry, that really reflect the needs of the communities that we are intending to serve.
Everything you just said, again, is so true. And I'm going to have to steal something from you, the great equalizer for transportation. And the fact that you related to DBEs as being partners, and that truly, if we're going to have equity, that they're partners. And that every community is not alike. And we need to assess each community and treat them that way. When we go from project to project, to look at the community and the people that we're serving and address them as individuals. You know, I believe transportation is the great connector. So the work we should do should center around the communities that we work and live in, because we do live in these communities that we work in as well. So,
and that's one of our key messages is that, you know, as we have companies and you have offices across the country, and some companies have offices across the globe, then we're citizens, right? We're citizens first of these communities, and we really want to make sure that we are creating infrastructure that really drives our communities forward. So, you know, it's not just that we're swooping in and that we're coming to save the day. It's that we live, and these are the places that we live, and we want to make sure that we're creating places that can advance and that provide opportunity for everyone.
it's so true. You know, it's, you know, when I go back home, I want to see change. I want to see things happen where my sisters and brothers live at, you know, in my future generations. I want my niece to be able to, you know, get across, you know, Peoria, even though it's small, much easier and safer. So yes. The problem seems to keep decision makers awake at night is workforce pipeline issues. I know you're heavily involved in active encouraging students to look at careers in transportation, especially students at Alabama A&M and other universities as well. How can we inspire the next generation to consider careers in transportation and infrastructure?
So, you know, number one, I'm a firm believer in leading by example, right? And so I try to show up. I try to show up early and show up often as I can. I have a busy schedule, but I do try to be present when I have an opportunity to go to Alabama A&M University and be a living example of what a transportation professional can be, right? So I talk to them and try to show them my passion for the infrastructure, for the industry that we're in, and talk to them about the opportunity, right? So number one, I try to show up and be a face of what a career in transportation can be for you. I also think that we have a remarkable opportunity now in this space as we talk about the transformational investment that is available for transportation projects in the community to really use these projects to be drivers or incubators for the industry. So we often talk about how we show up at the colleges, and I'll talk a little bit about that because, we need to show up at the colleges, we need to show up at the HBCUs, we need to show up at the minority serving institutions because we want a workforce that looks like the communities that we serve. In order to do that, we have to meet the students where they are, right? And so there is a wide plethora of universities that serve a myriad of students across our country, whether it's Native American serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, historically Black colleges, majority institutions. I think it's just important that we show up in those spaces and that we're able to show them the value of and the community connectedness of the careers in transportation, right? So I think the days are gone where we expect students to come to us because these are the good paying jobs. I think there's so many good paying jobs that are out there in industries across the country and the world that we really have to show the value of careers in transportation. And I think we have an opportunity with the projects that we have to do that. Whether it's internships, whether it's creating even field trips for elementary school students and middle school students. I do think we have to create a pipeline early and use the projects that are being developed today to really help create the pipeline of transportation professionals for the future. And I'm excited. I know AFTA is talking about that. I know COMTO is talking about that. April actually participated on a panel that we did at AASHTO's court winter meeting about workforce development. The U.S. Department of Transportation is investing a lot of resources in workforce development programs, not only on project sites where you're getting the workforce of today, but also at universities. I'm excited about a partnership they have with Morgan State University and the University of Delaware, where they're training railroad safety professionals. And so I think there's a lot going on in this space. And it's because we have an opportunity today with the amount of investment in the projects that are happening to really use them as showcases for and incubators for the workforce of the future.
I think it's interesting when you talked about, high schools and grade schools. Actually, HNTB and WSP are working together on a CREATE project in Chicago. And we're working with 4 grade schools and three high schools that are joined to the project. How do we go in there and serve this project without working with those students and motivating them and opening their eyes to transportation? And it's more than engineers. And that's what we need to show our young people, that there are different fields in transportation that they can be a part of. I was a political science major and a master's in public administration, but there's roles for everyone to play, and they're needed to be a part to make real change and have creativity in the way we go after projects.
Yeah, and I think, you're right, to your point that we really need to show sort of like the vast disciplines that are supported in the transportation industry. You're right, it's not just civil engineers. We have finance people, we have accountants, we have
lawyers,
the plannings, the lawyers, all of those people, there's a space for it. All of those people, the HR professionals within this industry. And I'd love to see more of those CREATE program type opportunities happening across the country. And I know we're beginning to see that, but I do think that that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to be in the grade schools and the high schools, and we're going to have to be partnering with our community colleges and with our four-year institutions to really prepare students for the jobs of the future.
So HNTB, thank you. You guys have been a longtime industry partner of COMTO, a true partner. Talk about the importance of this partnership in driving equitable outcomes in transportation.
So, I've started with a few, first of all, let me thank you all for your partnership. COMTO, we have been long-term partners. We were so honored to be the 2023 Industry Partner of the Year. We have members, you have 40 chapters. We have members active in over 22 of those chapters. We have over 75 professionals that are actively engaged in COMTO chapters at the local and the national level. And the company is just really supportive of our partnership with COMTO and encourages that. And that's one of the things that I really love about working at HNTB. One of the other things that I'll say is our partnership is invaluable. So we've talked about different opportunities and how we create equitable outcomes, but we partnered in Baltimore. We went to Coppin State. We did a DBE event, right? So really a Meet the Prime sort of event where over a couple 200 minority-owned firms were able to come and to meet with Bechtel and meet with HNTB, and COMTO was a sponsor of that, a partner of that with us. And so being able to sort of meet our small business partners is one way that our partnership has been very critical in terms of driving equitable outcomes. I mentioned earlier that April was in, I can't remember what part of California we were in now. We're so many places. We were actually in San Diego. April was in San Diego with me in December. And part of what we did there was talk about workforce development and really talk about the importance of having a workforce that really mirrors the communities that we live in. And so April was on that panel with Amtrak, with the Department of Transportation, with the Federal Railroad Administration. So really talking about what we need to do also in the workforce space. That's been critically important. One of the other things that I think our partnership does really well is support of your national training conference that you have in the summer. So bringing forth, the best and the brightest of the industry to really talk about issues that are important to us, like environmental justice, like equity, like engineering, and really ensuring that not just seasoned professionals are there, but that there's also an opportunity for younger professionals to be trained and students, right? You have your city interns there. And so that part of our partnership, I think, has also been critically important in terms of helping to drive equitable outcomes and diversify the industry. I certainly would be remiss if I didn't talk about your scholarship programs and our ability to support your scholarships and our city interns program. So I sit in our Mid-Atlantic Division office in Arlington, Virginia. And last year, one of the city interns we had, and I just have to say it because I can never say Alabama A&M enough, was a young lady named Taria Smith, who is a civil engineering major at Alabama A&M University. And the zeal that she brought to the office. And one of the things, I think some of the other interns could have been a little jealous because of the overlay of the city internship program and the networking opportunities and conference opportunity that brought for her. But, being able to make interns available to companies like ours, so that they can come and get that hands-on experience over the course of their collegiate career is also a way that we're going to continue to create a space for diverse professionals in this industry that will then go and co-create projects with communities that continue to drive those equitable outcomes. So I would say this partnership has been a very rich partnership, and I just want to thank you and April and COMTO for the opportunity to partner with you all as we continue to move forward.
Well, again, we want to thank HNTB because you're a true partner. Not only the financial part, but the participation and the leadership that you bring to COMTO. So thank you very much. That's a true partnership. And I know that young lady, to be able to come and do an intern and then see you there, that's, to see someone who looks like her and the fact that you went to the same school as her, the possibilities are endless. So that mentorship is there, and that will bring our people back to us and want to come work for us or to stay in this industry. So thank you. It's been wonderful. Thank you for spending this Thursday with me. I want to thank our special guest, Ms. Henrika Buchanan, Vice President, Transit and Rail Market Sector Lead at HNTB. You can watch the full episode on YouTube. Just search COMTO National. Join us next week for a conversation with Dr. Tamara Smith, Thursday, February 22nd at 12:30 Eastern Time, and learn more about the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials at comto.org. And I hope everyone is looking out for 2024 Women Who Move the Nation in Washington, D.C. So everyone, have a beautiful and wonderful day. Thank you again, Henrika.
Thank you, everyone.